meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, because Mike from Cafe Life. It's Easter Friday, and I'm sure many of us would probably be doing something very different at the moment if it weren't for lockdown. But one of the things that I'm very excited about doing is I've got my dear old friend, Dave
Hey,
Betts.
that's the old.
Uh, Dave on the other side of this Zoom meeting. And Dave's sitting in London at the moment. And Dave is a really close dear friend of mine who's worked quite a bit within Cafe Life, or the old gold digger, as we used to call it then. And Dave is also a really successful entrepreneur, especially over the last couple of years. And went overseas at the beginning of this year, left South Africa to go to the UK to extend the business that side. We said goodbye to each other about 2 months ago, never suspecting that our goodbye was going to be a bit longer than we thought, because he was actually due to be back in South Africa right now. But Davey, so great to have you here. How's London? What's life like that side of the world?
Hey, Mike, thanks for inviting me in on this podcast. It's great. I've just been following your podcast of late, and just want to say well done, by the way. I think you're doing a great job there. Yes, the world has changed somewhat. We arrived end of January and launched, basically pioneering our business into the UK and Europe. So we got going with some gusto in February, only to come to a screeching halt at the beginning of March with the coronavirus. And since then, the world seems to be a completely different place now. Like the rest of the world, we're scrabbling to try and make sense of it all, and how we move forward from here. So it's going to be an interesting discussion with you, I'm sure.
Yeah. So yesterday I was doing a Zoom meeting with a group. I think there were 6 of us on the call, and I'm having to learn new ways of facilitating. I think I'll always prefer the close proximity, but right now we have to learn these new ways. How's this impacting you, Dave, in terms of the business, and what impact are you experiencing?
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone thinks that their business is robust and bulletproof, and it's not really until you get to very extraordinary times like this that the real test is applied. And it is a difficult time for us. We have contracts with some of the very largest industrial companies around the world. And as you may well be aware, when things like this happen, companies can use what's called a force majeure clause in their contract to basically halt payments. We, just like many other companies, have been unfortunately at the other end of a force majeure notice from a number of our suppliers. And so we are watching and doing everything we can do to protect our cash flow and try and maintain salary payments to our staff. It is going to be a difficult road ahead. And of course, the keys of any business is momentum, keeping momentum going, keeping your presence felt by your customers, and demonstrating a value add and all of those good things. And those you can't now do in any conventional way. Suddenly, all of the tools, the meetings that we had scheduled, etc., are suddenly paused, and we are scrambling, just like the rest of the world, to find meaningful ways of reconnecting with our clients and with people, and keeping some resemblance of movement and momentum with our business. So these are definitely trying and testing times.
Yeah. I love your use of the word keeping momentum, because resilience is a huge word for us, and one that we do podcasts on. But for us, one of the anatomy of resilience includes the word motion. And can we just keep moving forward, even if at the moment it's very, very small steps? And we might need to be quite innovative in order to move forward. And in some ways, that's sort of what I'd love to shoot the breeze with you about this afternoon for about 15, 20 minutes. We'll just see where it goes. And so there's no scripts here. We're just going to go for it. But I mentioned the group yesterday that I worked with. And as a team, with this team, we engaged two questions. And the one thought was, if we could cast our mind back to January 2020, all of us were saying 2020, the year of plenty, plenty. And now it's more like empty, empty. But and now we're in April, and the world has changed drastically in 2-3 months. We don't need to tell anybody that. But we do know that there is an impermanence to everything, and it might take a while, but eventually we will move out of this. But like everybody is saying, the world will never be the same again.
Mm.
What and how should we as ordinary people just prepare or do for a world that's very, very different to what we had in
Mm.
January? What are your
It's
thoughts?
amazing, isn't it? When we moved into this year 2020, so many people were saying, this is the year of vision. This is the year where we will see clearly. This is the year of perfect eyesight. And they're all coming off the back of 2020. And in fact, this is the year that no one saw this coming. Well, very few, which is the irony of it, really. Obviously, it's interesting. Bill Gates 2015, and actually Obama was talking about in 2014 about the potential of a thing like this hitting. But of course, no one was listening, and very few made provision. And so we entered this 2020 year, and everyone was saying, "No, we're going to see straight. We know exactly what we do. We had our goals laid out, and then wham, something comes from completely offside, and here we are." And what this makes us do is the first thing I found, I don't know about you, is immediately we sink down to the bottom of the triangle again, and we're looking for basic needs. It's interesting. Everyone starts running for toilet paper. I mean, we're looking for toilet paper, and we're looking for the very basic of food, the pastas and the breads and stuff. No more are we looking for the nice steak restaurant and the best red wine. Just give me toilet paper and beans, and I'll be happy, because in the first response to any trauma is to go to our basic needs. And I think in anything that hits us like this, it's the first thing is we question what's really important. For some people, toilet paper and beans. For others, it's our family. I wish we got locked in with all of our family together. That's the starting point of looking at ourselves, and then not only in our own life, but also in our businesses. Boil our business down, what actually is the most important thing for us right now, and how do we do that one thing amidst this crisis? So there really is a tuning out of all the noise that we've lived with, and a focusing on what is essential. I don't know. You must have felt exactly that.
Yeah, I think crisis, and I'm so careful to try and glorify the crisis, because I think we want to put it out there. COVID-19 is horrible. None of us wish it were here, and people are experiencing huge loss. Your business, my business, we all having to find ways to do things differently. But there is something about crisis or the worldliness or disruption, which does cause us to have to see things differently and notice things that we didn't notice before. Mandy and I did a podcast. In actual fact, it's going to be released on Monday. But we in South Africa, like I'm sure in the UK, I know you guys are clapping at 8 o'clock in the evening for the health.
And it's an amazing thing. Just on that, Mike, I just moved into the neighborhood, and there are people up and down this street who have never spoken to each other ever, and yet since I've been here, they started a little WhatsApp group, and we're all out there clapping. I know the names of the people. Absolutely, amidst the tragedy of the event and the pain and the grief, there is something new that's also being birthed out of that. I think that's probably where you're going, right?
I think, you notice things that you wouldn't notice. We become familiar with the rhythms of the world and how things work, and we just take things for granted. And every week, what we're doing this side as well, which I'm not sure whether it's happening your side, but when the refuse collectors come around and pick up the rubbish, people are once again going into the gardens and clapping. And just over a week ago, I went in and I was waiting, and as I was waiting, I got a little bit nervous, because I thought to myself, I wonder how these guys are actually going to take it. it's almost like suddenly there's a crisis. Now we're clapping, and they took it so well, and it actually immediately put me at ease. But it was this thought: it's strange that crisis has to happen before we notice something that is so essential to us and say thank you. And I think being in your homes, having to do things differently, it's broken the rhythm. And with that rhythm can come knowledge and insights that you didn't have before. Yeah. But having said that, we don't want to glorify that at all. I've also had a thought, Davey, and it's interesting. We Easter for many people right now. This is very sacred days, and it's interesting that the whole thing of Easter is actually about death and resurrection. And I think for so many of us, when we consider the world in which we live in, if we're honest with ourselves, there is so much of the world that doesn't work. Whilst the world is definitely a more advanced place, and I think there's a whole lot of stats which talk about life is generally better for the majority, for a lot more people than it used to be in the past. But that Phil Collins song, "Another Day in Paradise," many of us wake up into another day in paradise. Things are good. But underneath the surface is a whole lot of things that almost need to die so that there can be a sense of resurrection. And
I'm reminded of that piece of scripture. I always grew up with, "Unless the seed falls into the ground and dies, how can it be made new again?" And this is a concept, Mike. Wow, it's an amazing concept. That we spend our life in trying to transform something from one to the other, but actually sometimes the only way to transform something is to let something die. And obviously we're not talking, personal, we're not talking life here, we're talking issues, habits, thoughts, ways in which we went about doing things. Sometimes it is through the death of some of those things that new things, new rebirths, new ideas, new innovations, new ideas, new dreams can be born, resurrected. I so resonate with what you're saying there, Mike, and such a timely thought, here at Easter time. Yeah.
And I suppose it's a hope. Desmond Tutu has a beautiful quote, and I'm probably going to mess it up, but it's something about hope is finding light in the darkness, no matter what the darkness is. And as we maybe try and seek for meaning, which is always a bit of a dangerous thing, we've got to be careful of trying to find meaning in everything. But one of the hopes could be that some things do die. For example, that I do notice forever now on the refuse workers, and it's not just at December when they knock on the door for a bonus that you're giving them a little bit of money. And I think if in my life, your life, but the systems of the world, certain things are reimagined, which I'm sure it will be, then yeah.
I agree. Another quote saying, I think, is necessity is the mother of invention. I'm an entrepreneur. I like starting things from scratch, and I like seeing gaps where there aren't solutions. And it's amazing to me to see suddenly everyone is saying, how do I meaningfully do my business, do what I was doing in a completely different paradigm? How do I counsel people? How do I do online meetings on Skype with new technology? Necessity has made people have to become internet savvy, use a computer, for instance. In fact, they were saying that the amount of people that used to work from home, as per where it will be when these embargoes are lifted, they reckon that up to 35% of our entire workforce will now continue or remain working from home. That's a huge shift from where it was, because necessity birthed something new, and sometimes it isn't a new thing as much as it's a new way of thinking about something. I think for South Africa, it's the birthing of a new way of thinking about South Africa, thinking about our society. You know, Boris Johnson said here in the news that England is a society. He was referencing Margaret Thatcher saying that she didn't think that there was such a thing as society. He's referencing a new view or a new way of looking at it. And another friend of mine says, never waste a good crisis. You know, a crisis, we need suffering and crisis in our lives to shake us, to undo our thinking and the paradigms that shape our thoughts, to rattle us into a place where we become reimagining what is and what could be and what should be.
Yeah, it's I think we can safely say that the world of October 2020 is very much a different world. Whilst a few things might go back, I can't wait to go back to coffee shops, to be in the sea. But even though, but even those, probably many things will be different. So here's an interesting exercise. Can I put you on the spot? And in a way, I'm doing it for myself as well. But I think something that can be quite helpful right now is to make what is just simple what if statements. So it takes you into the realm of possibility. So let me try and think of one. So here's a more simple one. What if most organizations don't need 50% of their workspace anymore? Can you think of one or two what ifs for me? A bit of pressure here. What if? Because this is the type of thinking that we probably need to go into. What if?
I mean, an obvious one for us is what if we don't need to travel on aeroplanes anymore to have our meetings? You know, the amount of time and money that's spent traveling in a car or on a plane or on a train to go and have a meeting. What if we conducted 50% more of our meetings on videos like this? And in doing so, save the planet, bring the ecology down, the emissions down, reduce the cost and the spend, become more efficient. What if we adopt that?
Yeah. What if we don't need the big shopping centers anymore? What if we actually get to know our neighbors, as you mentioned? What if?
What if? I mean, what if? Absolutely. Here's another one. A number of my friends are Christians and go to church. What if you don't need to meet in church every week anymore?
Yeah. What if the building goes? You don't need the building.
Absolutely.
The church without walls. Yeah.
Well, that's another podcast for us. That one.
Yeah. And it's quite, I think, as we're sitting in lockdown, these are probably good things to start doing, what if statements, because we just might find opportunity in those what if statements. I'm trying to think of the coffee shop. The coffee shop might be forever different. What if coffee shops have little cubicles for people to now do their little bits of work?
One of the interesting things I'm hearing is the rise of countries. What if countries only bought from their own manufacturers rather than continually looking to China or others to get the cheapest of the cheap? What if we started supporting our own manufacturers more, like we've been forced to, because we don't have the free trade like we do right now? What if we start supporting the local greengrocer and the local butcher as much as we support the main supermarket types? Those are some of the what ifs also that I think we need to look at that are happening right now.
Yeah. And as we extend our mind into the future, what is the alternate future that is going to be created? I love that terminology, alternate future. And it's scary, but always within disruption is the opportunity for the new normal. Which is going to emerge, and I think that can be quite exciting. Whilst again, I just keep thinking to myself, would I prefer to be in April 2020 that I thought was going to be April 2020? Yes, I would. But some things are dying, and some beautiful things are going to be given birth.
So resonate, Mike. As I said, we can't waste a good crisis. It is a crisis. It is a terrible, terrible thing that has happened to our world. But it is also an opportunity for greatness, for great things to happen to our world. And for me, the challenge for me is to make the most of this time. I'm stuck indoors. It's a beautiful day out there. I wish with all my heart I was out there, sitting in some beer garden overseeing the Thames. But I don't want to waste this opportunity. I don't want to look back and say, I wish I'd made the most of that time when I could have read or could have done that Udemy course, or I could have played the piano more, or I could have spent more time on the inner side. I guess my challenge to certainly the guys listening to this is to make the most of the time that you have, to worry only about the things you have direct influence on and not the things that you can't influence.
Yeah.
And I guess this is also the time of digging down deep to your faith, understanding what you truly believe about mankind and about yourself.
Yeah, I think it's a time definitely for good questions, and the worst question of all to be dwelling on. There's probably a time to ponder it for a moment, but the worst question to be dwelling on would be, why is this happening to us? Because it's just going to take us down all paths of blame and stuff like that. But, good questions. How am I going to use this time? What gift is this bringing me? What do I need to reconnect with? And then, like you said, what are the things that I believe, which I anchor myself in? And to go deep into those. And I want to read you a quote. I've got this quote in my diary that I wrote September last year. It comes from a guy called Eric Hoffer. And listen to this. In times of change, so I think we can clearly say we're in times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned will find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. So I'll say that again. So in times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned will find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. And I think there's a responsibility on all of us to actually be learning in this time, because you might be a very learned person, but you might get to the other side and that which you're learned in is no longer there. The learners.
Exactly, yeah. I think this is a season of unlearning. Someone once said it's those that choose to unlearn something every day. It's that world of paradigm, isn't it? You're told to look right and left when you cross the road in England, and that works fine until you go to America. And now if you look right and left, you're likely to get knocked over, because the paradigm in which you were taught something has fundamentally changed. You're on the wrong side of the road, or the right one compared to what you think. And I believe that the learnings that we had even 2 months ago, the paradigm has changed. And I agree, we have to unlearn some of those things we held dear. As I've always said to my kids, remain teachable, because it's the teachable that will inherit the earth. I guess our challenge in this time is to remain teachable.
So again, put you on the spot. If I had to push you for one thing that you have now learned in the last 2-3 weeks, lockdown in the UK, and I realize your first answer might not be the deepest one as you ponder it later on into the night, but what's the lesson so far?
How much I need to drink coffee with you, Michael, in coffee shops. As much as I love video conferencing, it ain't the same as sitting with someone face to face in a room, I have to tell you. I love it. You can divide the world right now into introverts and extroverts. The introverts are just loving this space, but hoping that the extroverts could leave. So there are many lessons that we're learning. I think one of the big things here is when you can't actually change what's going on right now, is to just relax and rest and be ready to respond when you can. And not be angst, not to walk around angst because you're frustrated, because you want to change things and do things and whatever you, and actually you just can't. And then just being still and settling and saying, I need to prepare my heart and my soul for when I can. I guess
yeah.
that's my
It's
learning.
it's a bit of Stephen Covey's spheres of influence coming back. Hey, focus on your spheres of influence.
Yeah.
Not on things that you can't change. And I know that you're a huge Covey fan.
I
So
am indeed. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 And I think for me, one of the lessons as well is at the moment is besides for the big ones of having to learn to do things differently, which is the breaking of a paradigm for me because, like you just said, I like this closeness of people together
Mm.
as they really move into vulnerable places and the magic comes forward, and that can happen through video conferencing, but it is a little bit different. But one of the things that I'm just learning is, and it's probably a little bit of energy management. We do need to listen to the news. We need to watch the news because it's very, very real. But you probably need to give yourself times for hearing that, and then times where you put the music on and you do your stuff and you create, because you can become paralyzed by the concern.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and it's to just sort of that tension and that balance is something that we probably need to get right.
Absolutely, absolutely. Remain creative. Keep stirring up those creative juices. For me, I've been writing songs again, playing the piano. I put myself onto another Udemy course, and
Yeah.
because I remember speaking once. In fact, I spoke about this in January. I spoke on learning to guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. How wow, I needed to hear that lesson again, is that now is the time to ensure that fear doesn't get a foothold in our thinking, that we guard our hearts in that respect. We let hope reign. We let creativity into our lives, so that when the new world is open and we can go out and enjoy it, we ourselves are new and changed and ready and refreshed.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully this time is giving a little bit of that, provided we're managing the negativity, which we do need to embrace.
Yep.
So we can't be rah people, everything's going to be fine. In actual fact, one of the things that I've been reminded of a little bit in the last 2 weeks goes back to Jim Collins's book, Good to Great. And that's like 25 years of age now. But the whole Stockdale paradox, do you remember the Stockdale paradox?
No, tell
You
me.
don't? So General Stockdale, who was the highest ranking US official in the Vietnam War, who was a prisoner of war, and how he talks about the Stockdale paradox, where he says the people who didn't survive or who didn't have endurance were those who were the optimists. And that's a little bit hits us because we're always telling people be positive. He said the people who actually made it through were those who were almost more informed pessimists in a sense. Adam Grant uses the word defensive pessimist, but it's having this belief that we will get through this, and then also the realization, exactly like we've spoken about, that you can't control things. And who knows, further 2 weeks lockdown for us could become a bit longer. We could be in and out of this for a while. And what probably isn't helpful is a blasé optimism, which pretends it's not there. So it's to be able to dance with the negativity, but to be able to transcend it. If that
I
makes
love that.
sense.
Dance with the negativity, but be able to transcend it. Nicely said. Well done. I would frame it like this. We need to manage our expectations. We need to set realistic expectations. Be positive within the expectations that you set, but don't set yourself unrealistic ones. Otherwise, you constantly live feeling, downcast, negative, broken. So realistic expectations, I think, is the answer here.
Yeah, and then it just gives me one more thought as well. Within that realistic expectations is to try and avoid sensationalism. And you can just imagine how people will be trying to interpret this, whether they're coming from faith perspectives or whatever perspectives they are. And I think right now what we need is grounded people, which is more about let's watch and see before we're too quick to make certain stupid statements. Yeah, so it's to be able to dance with that negativity, but be above it, manage your time, but then watch, notice, see before you before you we become stupid. Yeah. Davey? So
It's an
it's
amazing time, man.
but Davey, just great being with you today. And can we do this more?
Yes, absolutely. Let's do another one of these, and let's see how we're doing as the days go on.